Mr. Clark After Dark is brought to you by Luxy. That's Luxy. Luxy sets the standard for modern dating as it allows you to be truly aware of the intentions and backgrounds of any potential match. Swiping through different dating apps, from what I've been told, can be tiring and can leave you with a constant feeling of disappointment and dread after seeing the leftovers in your dating pool. With Luxy, an exclusive platform for those with high standards and boasts only a 10 to 15% acceptance rate, as well as a distinctive income verification feature, you can end your search for the right dating app today and start focusing on finding the right person for you. Download the app today to see if you qualify for a better chance at finding your person, especially and maybe make 2025 that year for you. And now, on to the show. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Mr. Clark After Dark and the New Year's Eve special. I love that everyone's enjoying the Christmas special a lot with my brothers that we did there a few weeks ago, and I think it went really well. Today's episode, pretty similar. I know it's easy to get bogged down in the educational trenches, and it can be exhausting for everyone. Obviously, even for me, being an educator who talks about education as a hobby, it can be a lot to kind of take on as kind of mostly everything that you're doing, especially in a profession that feels like no matter what you do, you're never doing enough. So it's, for whatever reason, I still keep doing it, but I like doing these later episodes as well. 2024 was crazy. I mean, I think I spent like over 3 weeks in just Italy alone this year, which was awesome. Moved across Canada, got to visit a bunch of different countries, started a new gig. Shout out Beaconsfield Middle School, absolutely legendary school that I'm at in St. John now. I think that, again, I like to just gas up my peers as much as the next person, but I think what's happening at the school I'm in right now is very special. I think there's a good group of people there. The administration, like support from the district, has honestly been awesome. And I promise that's not a sponsor. No one's paying me to say that, I guess, other than my salary. But it really has been a really cool transition for me coming into New Brunswick and now starting to feel at home. I will say, I guess there's things I'm not learning or realizing about my personality until it's actually said directly to me. So I'm McTavish. I mean, shout out Marauders for the other one there, for the other school. But some people would say that I was kind of the golden retriever sometimes. I know Jason Hamilton kind of took that from me once he came in, and I'll include him later in this episode as well. And then people at McTavish would say I was the surfer personality as well. And then Beaconsfield got us these mugs for Christmas they're meant to convey a trait of your personality. So I guess I'm skateboarder/surfer person now with this M&O mug. Again, not a sponsor, just kind of a cool idea that people think I'm just a chill guy. You know, I'm just built like that. You know, it is what it is. And so for the New Year's episode here today, it's not just going to be me talking entirely. I kind of wanted to go over and relive some of my favorite moments from the year. I'll do a little reflection piece toward the end if you'd like to stick around for that. I promise it won't be as funny, hopefully, unless you just laugh at me as a person, which is also fine. As long as you're laughing, I don't really care. So I have about a dozen reels I'm just going to play through, maybe give some context to afterwards. And to start, I'm going to go to this one here, which I think is my favorite one, is W. Riz. The first, it's wisdom, resilience, integrity,
you absolute nerd.
Zest and zeal.
That's amazing. That's so good. Yes.
And then the second one is Giat. Gain your ambition through tenacity.
No. Well, because what was the thing they would always try to tell you Giat meant? Like, girl.
Yeah, it was always something stupid.
It's but there's that, what it actually means. And then it was they always had this fake thing that they would tell you it was. That's so good. Oh my gosh.
And I always jokingly say in the class, live, laugh, love.
Yeah.
And I ended up with saying it's LLL.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's live, laugh, and learn. If you do those, then what you love will find you. It's actually super
there's a
deep.
cheer.
Yeah,
this is an audio format, but there is a cheer.
And so my first one is W. Riz. And so that was the first one with the legendary Steph McFarland. in June, obviously working at McTavish, being a Marauder for a few years, and I do miss it dearly. I do miss the social studies atmosphere sometimes, and just getting into the um, trenches of ideas and going back and forth with my students. But being nominated one as a staff speaker and not being able to attend in person as I was off doing marking diplomas, I feel like I need to try to make fun of education in a way by just like throwing extra acronyms in there and using some of the lingo like WRIS and GIAT. No one else had been exposed to these acronyms yet, so I wanted to kind of get a fresh perspective, and her reaction obviously did not disappoint, as you can tell. So I've listened to this reel, I don't know how many times, just like listening to Steph just absolutely give a excellent gut laugh. Steph was also one of the chaperones on the Italy trip, so really got to know her a bit. And we actually didn't go over the grade 9 dance, I don't think, because I was actually a grade 9 student at McTavish when she was a teacher at McTavish. So maybe later down the road we can do a dance theme, like dance stories. But anyway, that was Steph McFarland with the first one. Absolutely hilarious. I think I'll stick with the McTavish trend here just to start us off. The next one, as I mentioned, golden retriever / legend / subpar resurgence Warzone player Jason Hamilton with probably one of the best quotes I've heard all year.
That night, oh, I got this. Like, yeah. I'm smart. Like, I'm smarter than your average bear. I can do this. You know what I mean? So then I'm like self-talk to pump myself up. Like, hey, I can do this. Versus them, I feel like they just shut down. Like, I am not the smartest bear, so I am absolutely. There's no chance. Like, I hear that a lot. There's no chance. Like, I hear kids, there's no chance I'm gonna graduate and stuff. And mind you, I know I had negative thoughts like this, but just the way every single day they come in, I'm not smart. I'm not gonna graduate. I'm not gonna this. And I'm like, oh, you're gonna graduate because I'm gonna drag you across that line if I have to. Oh no, I didn't study that night. Oh, I got.
So that would be Jason Hamilton. Absolute legend from McTavish, just doing great things with the McTavish Peak program. But I think the smarter than your average bear is probably one of the best quotes I've heard all year. It's just funny when you hang out with someone and teach someone for so long that you kind of think you've heard everything that they've like all the classic jokes and inside lines that they've got. Absolutely not. He knew, or he surprised me with the smarter than your average bear out of nowhere, and I still get a kick out of it every time I listen to it. So that was Jason Hamilton, the one and only, with being smarter than your average bear. And I do think the avoiding confrontation episode with him was an underrated one. I think it was definitely one of my favorite ones I've done so far. To stick with the McTavish theme to wrap it up, I do have with my cousin, the one and only Staci Bailey, where we go in, and my thing is always, some teachers have like their doors decorated, and some people have like lights all over the place, and some people have just like insane decorations. Mine was like, I want a Keurig in here, and I want like I found some from legendary Dan Baisley. He had some Cold War posters left in the cupboards for me, so I put up all that propaganda on my back wall, put some paper up. But again, especially compared to my wife who teaches kindergarten, she's got like seasonal themes and all that stuff. Could not be bothered, if that's me being honest. Now that I don't have my own official classroom anymore in my new role, I don't miss having to decorate something. I mean, I can actually keep all my books at home now rather than keeping them at the school. So for this one, it's a classic about Staci and I discussing our classroom decor choices, and I think hers was one of the best posters I've heard of so far.
But I do like a clothing cleanse like every 2-3 months.
Oh, all the time.
And I'll do like a full garbage bag.
Yeah.
And I can't handle clutter.
I know.
I don't know what it is about it. And I think even my classroom almost kind of looks like a hospital room.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, I just can't deal with everywhere all the time.
No.
Are you kind of like that?
I'm like that.
Yeah.
I have nothing in my room. I have one metal poster that says "Nugs, not drugs," and then I have nothing else. That's the only important thing.
What is it? Like chicken nuggets?
Chicken nuggets.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. I bought it when we were in Vegas last year, and I was like, Mom, do you think this is appropriate for my class?
Like it's big enough, but I do like a clothing.
So that was the one with Staci where, again, I don't think I had any inspirational quotes on my wall. I always wanted to get like a cheesy JFK one. I was thinking about How I Met Your Mother when Barney has like a poster about like penguins. Like the one who's different will get left out in the cold. Like the ones that like are actually anti-inspirational. But Staci, her whole personality, I think, is wrapped up in like the "it's not that deep" or "nugs, not drugs." I think that's perfectly fitting for Staci's whole kind of energy. If you've had her as a teacher or know her at all, then you 100% agree. Now, I will move away from McTavish a little bit and get in some of the kind of the online podcasts that I've done over the past year. I would say before the summer, I did take the summer off of the podcast. And obviously I was moving across the country. I was spending 3 weeks in Europe, so not trying to soft flex by any means, but there was just a lot happening at the end of that year. Staff speech, diploma marking, moving, trip, just a lot happening where I probably went about 6 weeks where I wouldn't have even been able to record. So one of the first ones that I found shocking about doing a podcast is you kind of just get, I don't like the word access to people because that sounds like cheap and transactional, but people are just willing to have a chat with you online pretty much at any time. And someone actually reached out to me the other day asking to do a virtual coffee. So I guess that's maybe a new thing. People are doing virtual coffees now, or I guess I'm doing a self virtual coffee just for fun here. But one of the first people that I reached out to online that agreed to do a podcast with me was actually Gaspare Randazzo. And I'm sure if you follow Gaspare, you get a lot of laughs at his videos and like the jokes about working 18 hours a day. Super funny guy. And honestly, very genuine guy. I love following him. I love doing the podcast when he's got his own podcast. He's a stand-up comedian. And I think he was one of the first of like a string of comedians that I had on. Had a few from the Board Teachers Comedy Tour, but he was probably the only one, I think, who's separate from them, but is still a teacher who is a comedian. So what I found interesting about inviting Gaspare on was, obviously, any teachers can talk about teaching. That's pretty standard, is what we do. It's kind of what we know. But with Gaspare, he was actually on a Netflix show called The Trust. And it was actually a super cool theme for a game show, but I've watched Big Brother Canada, Big Brother US, and I always kind of wondered, like, what are the stupid questions that people don't typically talk about on those reality shows when there's like a 24/7 live feed. So I'll play the two reels here of the things that I had interests, or I guess was intrigued about when asking him about his reality show experience.
How do you get like haircuts?
You don't.
Yeah.
You don't. Yeah, I mean, so it's so funny that you said that because Joel told us that he was a barber. So I was like, dude, I actually brought my clippers.
This is my guy.
If you wanna, and he's like, nah, not today. And I'm like, dude, all we have is time. I was like,
what do you mean though?
He's like, nah. And I'm like, well, who kind of barber are you? I was like, I'll Venmo you when we get out. Like, I'll send you money. Like, just cut my hair. And he's like, nah. And I'm like, all right, well, you suck. That's why when I
great relationship building.
when I started questioning like if he was even a barber. But yeah,
so with Joel, spoiler alert, I think it's like the first episode he gets kind of voted off as someone that you can't trust in The Trust. So I guess my thing was always, he goes a bit deeper into that, like when there's certain like when you're interviewed about certain things, like if you're interviewed like a week later but something happened before, like your hair has to try to be like cut down. But anyway, if no one from the outside world can contact you, like how do you get a haircut? So that was kind of one of my own wonderings. And now number two here, pun intended, for what I was wondering about is how much privacy do you actually get when kind of handling your business?
like you are mic'd and cameras on you 24/7. Like you can't even go to the bathroom.
Well, this is
without
what this is like what I was thinking. Like, are you like taking a shit and they're like hearing you?
Like you're like,
crazy.
hey guys, I have to go to the bathroom. So if you want to shut my mic, I would love that. If not, listen in for more with like, you know what I mean? It's like And most of the time they just shut your mic because they don't want to hear you go to the bathroom. But
So
it
do they
is
have people
awkward.
on all the time, like listening? I
24/7.
assume.
There's people manning the cameras 24/7. Also, like, you are.
So, I mean, I've talked about Uncle Joe Stalin a few times in the Big Brother mentality, but I don't know how I would feel about being mic'd up 24/7, especially when I'm just trying to find a moment of peace on the toilet after a long day, especially when you're kind of in this weird competition type energy all the time. So, yeah, obviously go check out the episode with Gaspare. Check him out online. He does a lot of funny reels. But anyway, that was one of the first interesting kind of comedians that I had on in 2024, and I think those were two reels that absolutely stuck with me. I was just like with things that actually happened behind the scenes on these shows. So next, and I think as you'll see, like I have Jay Yoder and Gaspar and Sam Salem here, and they're all stand-up comedians in the U.S. and they all actually work together. Like some will open for the other ones. Thinking like the New York, Philly area. I do believe Sam is based in L.A., but he's kind of blown up a lot, not because of my episode by any means, but since we kind of did our episode together. And the first one with Sam is that it's funny, like that he was like a touring, and still is, I'm pretty sure, a touring stand-up comedian who is still working and subbing in classrooms like from Monday to Thursday, then traveling on the weekend. So I can't imagine, like, you do have to have a certain level of wit to kind of compete with people, with students at the middle school level to just maintain your sanity. But I can only imagine the material he gets, as well as just in the moment having to kind of clap back. So here's one of the first ones from Sam about some advice to kind of combat these, the gaslighting you get.
You got to gaslight the gaslighters. This younger generation is so big into gaslighting. This girl came up to me and with my TikTok page open and was like, she didn't have it open. She wasn't holding it up yet, but she was holding her phone. She goes, "Mister, I found you on TikTok." I was like, "Oh, I don't have TikTok." And she's like, "Yeah, it's right here." And she shows me, and I'm like, "That's not me." She's like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, no, you're not the first person people say that I look a lot like him." I'd written my name on the board, like Mr. Salem. And she looks at the board and looks back at it like, "But you guys have the same last name." I'm like, "I know, isn't that crazy?" And then she plays the video, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, your voice is different." And I was like, "Yeah, see, it's not the same person." Sometimes you gotta.
So I gaslighting the gaslighters, and I think it was actually after this that I bought like a 10 pack of like microfiber cloths that I would use to clean my glasses. I had like in my classroom at the school, and my grade 10s, they were gray, and I said to them, I was like, "Oh, I had these cloths made of my cat that passed away in December. Like, this is made from his fur." And I let it go for so long, and I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, like sometimes when I miss him, like I'll smell them, and I'll dab my eyes just so I feel like he's close to me." And they were just absolutely mortified. And I kept this joke going for, I think, at least a couple of days. Where I know a few of my grade 10s were looking at me a little bit differently after that. But that's kind of the whole part of having fun in middle school, is just being able to troll them a little bit. So gaslighting the gaslighters, absolutely a valuable tactic from Sam. And now on to the next one with Sam here, where this was one where I was introduced to probably my most used quote for May and June. It didn't make the WRIS, GIAT, Live, Laugh, Learn acronyms for success, but it was definitely up there and one of the most common expressions you would have heard come out of me in those months.
Be really snarky. Like he said, like, "Mr. You da 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 da," and I was just like, "Oh well, who asked?" And which isn't even that funny, but to middle schoolers, like that's like the most devastating when someone says something, hitting with a "who asked," and I said that, and these group of girls start laughing, and one of them went, "What's 4 + 4?" And just a group of them went, "8," and then they're like, "He ate you up," and I was like, that's funny. He tried to say something to me really snarky.
So I think I said, "Ate you up, no crumbs," probably more than 8 times for sure in those few months. I do think people have asked me, like, what do you miss about being a classroom teacher now that I'm kind of in more of a support role, or I am in a support role? it would definitely be the volume of banter that you get and like the things that you hear. And I'll post videos sometimes of like the crazy things that students will say to me, but it's you don't get quite the same amount when you're only dealing with 4 and 5 at a time, or sometimes even 1 and 2. So the one who asked is genius because everyone's gonna be like, oh, because no matter what you say, they're gonna say that anyway. And then for the second part of 4 + 4, 8 you up, no crumbs, I feel like that's still maybe part of my vocabulary, or should be. So Sam, keep subbing, keep doing your thing. Absolutely love that. But the next one, this one hits a little bit more closer to home because, as far as I know, unless I was just absolutely teaching incorrectly in Alberta, which is probably true to an extent, we weren't really that focused in on data and collecting data. Like you'd often hear, I guess the way that I would perceive data-driven instruction in Alberta was like, oh, okay, I would do my unit test. There's 60 questions. Then we would get like a detailed report of like which students chose A or D. And then if you had, let's just say, 4 answers on a question, if 60% chose D and 40% chose C, then obviously A and B aren't good enough as like distractors to make that like a valid question. So that was the way I perceived, like, oh, like I'm doing data informed instruction and assessment because I'm looking at the percentages. Anyway, moving to New Brunswick, everything is data. Like it's not just like end term assessment. It's like we've got this holistic framework where there's like 70 different like achievement indicators and skill descriptors, and you're always like 1s and 2s, and which is honestly very beneficial. Like it gets you a lot more detail about how and why you choose the students you work with and what you do with them versus just kind of like large scale summative work. But with Andrea Spears here, she made this comment. I was like, oh, like it was funny. But now that I've kind of been in a bit more of a data focused district and curriculum, I think that this one hits a bit more, it resonates a bit deeper now.
It was saying to the mic, data-driven instruction. Here, let me get my microphone. Data-driven instruction.
You know, I like
like,
one of the I borrowed my friend's resume to update mine, but like I saw on hers, like she's an English teacher, so like the whole lingo, like again, I have my writing skills, whatever they are, but like she is legit. Again, teacher bestie Hillary Morgan, who sadly left me. But
sorry.
It was like the first line in her job description was like utilize data-driven assessment to enhance. Like, but I don't even remember what it was. I was like, yeah, that's a good one.
Yes. And you read this stuff and you go, dang, and then you go, that's just what you did this morning. All I did was.
So we're talking about how to entertain teachers, and she said that was her opening line, was just utilize data-driven instruction. And I'm giving away all of my resume secrets there. Obviously, Hillary never made the cut for this one because her episode was back in 2023 for one of the openers. But yeah, the utilize data-driven instruction, and Andrea Spears, also a comedian with the Board Teachers Comedy Tour, also a great follow. And again, by no means am I being asked to promote these people. These are just the laughs that we've had. So we've gone through Gaspar, gone through Sam, gone through Andrea, gone through my favorite McTavish folks. I would say the last few ones are kind of more on like making fun of certain parts of education. So this one with Jenn Keigher, East Nash teacher, I feel like I've always liked athletics. I've always enjoyed athletics. I don't see myself at all, even though I'll help out with like junior team, like JV teams and like cross country, which is an easy sport to coach if you don't want to be good at it like me. But I've never been like, oh, I want to coach like top level anything. So I never played top level anything. So I don't want to pretend to be that person. But I've always felt like I've been gym teacher adjacent. Maybe that's playing into my skateboarder surfer role a little bit, but I think she hit the nail on the head here with her comment about like male personas in education. And so many people come to mind when I listen to this, but I don't think this reel got the credit it deserved, but I'll see what you think.
That's funny to me. Who it's almost like the like male PE teacher coach, but I'm not a PE teacher. Like I just see that kind of like mantra a lot of like.
Why do I feel so hurt all of a sudden?
Yeah, so I just kind of see that being like a thing. Like,
yeah,
you go into their class and it's just I don't know. It's just different. Like, but that's funny to me.
So that one was like why male teachers kind of get away with more. And I think too, like, I think it's like 20 to 30% of educators in total are actually male. I think that scales down to even closer to like a 10-90 split at the elementary level and even K to 3. It's mostly female. Not like we're dominated, but just like it's mostly women at the younger grades for the most part. But I think if you're a man who's just ever worked out in your life, you kind of like the students kind of place that label on you, like, oh, like that guy, like he's lifted before, so he's like a bro. I think that bro teacher mantra is something I guess for whatever reason, I'm just built like a chill guy. It is what it is. But I think that comes up and is placing people a lot more than you would think. But now for the last few here, I think this one with Jay Yoder was hilarious because like I worked with the Autism Society for like a few weeks one summer. Very eye-opening experience, just kind of really taught me how to not rush your judgment when looking at behavior. I heard this quote recently. It was like, all behavior makes sense with enough information. So especially if you have like a behavior difference, if there's a behavior difference, there has to be a reaction difference from the person who's kind of perceiving that behavior. Don't mean to go too much on like a deep rabbit hole here on my faux philosophy. You're welcome. And then with Jay Yoder, I believe he has 2 children with autism, but this was a really funny clip, I thought, when it came to trying to find the humor and trying to, I think his child was having trouble eating or wasn't eating, so this was, I'll let him do the talking here for his story.
Dinner time was like, the first 4 years of her life, dinner time was like going to war. It's like at the end of your day, you did all this stuff at school.
Yeah.
Now you're trying to sit down and have a meal, and you had to like, nothing would work. She wouldn't eat anything. We had to do food therapy. We sent her to food therapy. They'd have you bring in a bag of something non-preferred. They'd take her in the back for a half hour, and then they'd come back and be like, yeah, she ate it all. What sorcery are you doing back there? Because I have no... And so, like, what they were doing is they were having her choose activities she'd like to do. They would do them, and then and then if she wanted to continue doing them, she had to do something. They would start with like, you have to touch the food, you had to kiss the food, you had to take a mouse bite, you had to take a horse bite. I was trying to work a joke with this in my pit that it ended up being a little too risque, but it wasn't too bad. But it was just like, I'm like, what are you guys doing back there? She's like, oh, we just start with some light touching and kissing. I'm like, what is going on back there? And are you taking new clients? Because I'm struggling too. It's but like that's what they were, because they let me. Because if I go back there, it destroys it. So I mean.
So dinner time's like going to war. I do like the gradual kind of release of responsibility there that Jay was talking about, or that he said the tactic they employed. Again, trying to find the humor in all of the tough times of life, I think, is definitely healthy. Another one that's kind of resonated here, moving into my conversation with Jessica Hawk from My Teacher Face. I do think that, especially people who are going into education now, and again, I've probably beaten the dead horse, like the horse fight that he was talking about there. If you want to go into education, you can. I think that's pretty much the new reality. I feel like I'm 27 now, so I think 20 years ago, if you were 27, people would be like, oh, like you're still in your 4th year of subbing. But I do think there's always been areas that would be the places to get your first opportunity. So Fort McMurray's commonly been known as one of those in Canada, but this was one that I think Jessica Hawk really illustrates the importance of. And I think she makes an important note here that she was at one school for 1 year, like wanted to quit teaching. Then she found her school that she wanted to be at and stayed there for 31 more years. So I do think it's very important to try different places and different schools and different types of teaching and different subjects before you kind of put it all together. I can understand and appreciate you get an absolutely abysmal like grade 7 or 8 class for 3 months and you're just absolutely worn down by the constant need to maintain control to make it seem like you're a good teacher. Because I mean, the kids need boundaries for sure, but dealing with the constant screaming, I get it. Like, I can understand why people don't want to do the gig. They want to quit. But again, teaching a private school of 15 kids in grade 3 might be very different than a public grade 7 school. So that's kind of what I think she's illustrating with this point and with further conversation in that episode.
Hired on the spot that something was wrong. And here I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm such a good candidate. They like offered me a job. They almost wanted me to sign the contract immediately. And I'm thinking I'm this stellar graduate and they just wanted to scoop me up. Because of course they did. I didn't even tell you my GPA yet. Wear my little green suit. It's 1992. I just have it all going on. Then I go to the school and I realized that we were the first school over the border from Washington, D.C. And so all of the kids who got expelled from D.C. schools came to our school. So my first year of teaching was 8th grade, and I had 3rd year 8th graders who were 15 going on 16. And when they turned 16, they could drop out. So here I was, Polly Prissy Pants, going in thinking I was going to change the world. Meanwhile, I have kids who have been through so much in their lives. Yeah. And honestly, they hated me in the beginning because here's another person coming in to save them. And it really was a wake-up call for me. And it was great, a great learning experience. By the end of the year, they liked me enough to walk me through the halls so that I didn't get jumped. So that was very nice. I should have known when I got hired on the spot.
So yeah, if you're worried about getting jumped in your first role, I do think that there's possibility that you don't necessarily need to stay at that school forever. I mean, those intro gigs sometimes build character. I was fortunate enough to have awesome jobs so far, so my perception of education is a little bit skewed in that regard, I'll be completely honest, but yeah, just one of those things. So another one here was with Cabrina Lafonte. Her and I had a great conversation. She's honestly like a literacy wizard for K-5. She posts free resources all the time. She posts a lot of really good stuff. She talks about like putting her whole classroom into like a chessboard. Excellent stuff for like changing it up in the classroom. But we had this kind of back and forth here about decoding and encoding. But it kind of takes me back to the data-driven part from before, where all these things are super fluffy until you actually have to deal with it in front of you. So decoding has been a lot more involved in my daily experience now in my new role versus my old one. So yeah, I'll let you listen into this one.
What the word decoding meant to save my life. I was like, what does decode mean? I was like, what is that goal? I was like, oh,
wait,
that's
don't tell me.
Oh.
Decoding. Would this be like finding like the sounds and like the prefix and suffix? Like,
so like
I'm gonna put myself on the spot here. I don't actually know.
So like a goal for like decoding the student. I mean, this is good.
I mean, yeah, I know decoding. It's like my favorite thing ever.
I love to decode. Decode till I die. But like a goal would be the student will be able to decode the list of words with 90% accuracy in 4 out of 5 trials. That means a student will be able to correctly read this word list. So read the word, an isolated word. Mm-hmm. It's just a fancy word for read, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because on the opposite side, you have encoding. So you have encoding, which is writing or spelling, and then you have decoding, which is reading.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love the fancy vernacular. It's my favorite.
Right? I mean, I feel fancy when I say it. I'm like, I didn't know what the word.
So decoding, encoding, reading and writing. If you want to sound super fancy at your next educational cocktail party, by all means, just start throwing those words out there and you'll feel like an absolute master of literacy. But yeah, like it's sometimes I feel like people who are only higher up use these words, and I'm like, oh yeah, I totally know what's going on. I know what you're saying. Obviously, I do know what they're saying a bit more. But it's all like science of reading terminology here with Cabrina. So I thought that was a funny anecdote where I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be scared to throw myself on the spot and absolutely poop the bed in front of people. I've been doing that my whole life. I think it's kind of worked for me so far, but a lot of funny people that have been on, a lot of good moments. Obviously, I would say the podcast is probably 70-30 when it comes to serious, and I'm trying to find some humor in some things. But the next one, kind of in line with my sibling stories from the last episode, was like Jennifer Gonzalez, I mean, is an absolute icon with educational development and PD. I know she only taught for a few years, I believe. I can't remember the exact details, but this was one I remembered reading. Because again, you can't do everything perfectly in education. It takes a long time to find your groove. And even self-admitted, sometimes you find your groove and you forget you can improve. So like you find a way of doing things that works. And just because it works for you doesn't mean it actually works for the students you're working with all the time. So I do think there can be a bit of contention of telling teachers, like, you can still go out and learn, even though you're already doing so much. Like some people will say, like, oh, you should do some PD over Christmas break or summer break, but it's like, I'm just trying to actually live my life in these times and just talk to my family and not ghost people that I haven't seen in 4 months. So I do think there's a lot of back and forth, but I think she said hers, yeah. So her sister was a teacher and she responded to one of the articles, and I'll kind of let her tell the story here.
Article I read where I think you like apologized. And I think this was like 2 years ago. And you said someone had messaged you being
My
like,
sister.
this makes you feel like such a horrible teacher seeing.
Yeah. This is my sister. I don't know if I actually said that it was my sister in the article.
So, right.
I think I said it's somebody I know, but yeah, it's my sister.
Okay.
She's my like kind of sometimes my worst audience, because she'll just be like, yeah, you make me feel like crap sometimes.
Yeah.
And I like won't even like listen to your podcast sometimes because you're just like, try this, do this. This is going to be great. And she's just like, I can't.
Yeah.
Stop telling me I'm doing everything wrong, which is never what I'm really saying.
Yeah.
Even if I am, sometimes I say
No,
stuff
no,
that
no. And
sounds
I've
like
never
you're
taken
doing
that
it
either.
wrong. But what I actually mean is you're doing this wrong. It's not your fault. Try this. It's going to make it so much easier. It's never just without a solution. It's never just like, oh, you're screwing this up. You know, you're terrible.
You had an article I read where I think you like
So that was the siblings keeping you humble with Jennifer Gonzalez. I mean, that's not like explicitly funny by any means, but just knowing that the people closest to you are going to be honest with you. And yeah, I think even for her, it's like, okay, maybe I can help simplify my approach, which I thought was pretty funny as well. But the last one here for some of the funnier moments from this year on the podcast would be with Carl Azuz. Carl, I know, he's known for being kind of like the CNN 10 guy for a long time. He's got his own kind of separate intro thing. You teach social at all? Absolutely, you should show him every day. He has like little 10-minute clips where he kind of introduces the news of the day around the world, and he's always tossing puns out there. And he actually got me with this pun. I was not expecting it at all. I don't know how he was so quick and prepared for it, but I think this was a good one from Carl Azuz to finish it off.
On stories of tragedy or major political controversy or anything like that.
But here's a tsunami pun for you guys.
No, yeah, no. I don't want to get swept away with tsunami puns.
No.
But beyond that, I do love the ability to bring myself into it. I think a little more than I did in the past. So I don't do puns on.
So that would have been my last one there with Carl, and you can tell by the background, I think I had lived in my new home for about 4 days at that point. I just did like quick setup, try to get an episode done, because I know him and his assistant kind of wanted to get something together. So yeah, those are the top moments. I think of Mr. Clark After Dark. I guess if there's any moments that you thought were funnier than those, please shoot them my way. Obviously I have ones from my brothers I haven't posted any reels of yet from the Christmas episode, but 2024 was awesome. The podcast has given me so many more cool opportunities than I originally even thought. Even just, I think, like a lot of people that I've talked to who are podcasters, it's like, oh, like you should use your podcast as like a lead magnet, which I guess like it's kind of just classic like Alex Hormozy talk, or whatever. But to me, the podcast is the lead. Like being able to just have virtual coffees or just be able to discuss the crazy world of education. I mean, I have gotten, like, full disclosure, some revenue from some advertisers over the past year, but like, yeah, nothing to call home about, just enough to kind of help support the show and kind of cover the overhead costs of it. But that's really all I want. And obviously it's cool to get millions of downloads, but it's just the podcast in and of itself and the opportunity to talk with such interesting people doing cool things all over the world has been a really great experience. And especially for this past year, like the show kind of started out being specifically just teachers I worked with, getting them to know them on deeper levels. I guess some things that stick out to me right away, like Kelly Haldane and her stories of like teaching in Africa and in the UK. Like those were things that just like bring your machete to work day. Those were just crazy stories that I just never expected to hear about. And when you actually take the opportunity to have those in-depth conversations with people that you work with all the time, it's very rewarding in and of itself just in doing it. So I think I see myself doing this for a long time. I definitely don't see any reason not to. For 2024, I would say being able to do episodes with everyone is always good. It's always fun. But like Daryl Davis and Daniele Bolelli, they cemented in my brain just this love of the value conversation can have and what can be produced. Like, I'm not going to actually produce anything of immediate value just from you hearing the words that anyone else says, or even hopefully even if something that I say, but the way you shift your approach and perspective to the way that you're doing the things you're already doing, I think has compounding value that extends beyond just hearing an immediate conversation. I think that's why podcasts in general are so valuable. Seems like they're now becoming the dominant kind of media outlet, but I think for 2024, I've got some, I guess, like big names. We got some cool things kind of going together. I think I'll be posting about it sometime in the next few weeks, but there's a few podcasters, Canadian education podcasters, like Curtis Houston, Tyler Como, Tim Cavey, and Morgane Michael, who we're all putting together like a Maple Minds panel. So we're going to start doing some quarterly stuff here throughout the year. And I think I'll save the audio from those episodes from our panel discussion and just add them as Mr. Clock After Dark episodes. And we'll kind of promote like a Canadian podcasting group. I'm also on a few different panels here in the next month. I'm hoping to be on a few more podcasts. I already have some lined up that we're going to go into. And thank you to Tim and Tyler for having me on theirs already. But 2024 was a cool year. A lot of cool conversations. Took the summer off this year. Do not plan on taking next summer off by any means. I see the show kind of staying weekly, doing Think Alouds, and putting together some sort of travel episode from my Europe experience to kind of give you guys some videos and change it up a bit. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Thank you for the success of the Christmas episode. Here's to a great 2025. The first episode coming out next week will be with Martin Malone. He's like a teacher's personal trainer, but him and I just talk the simple parts of fitness that everyone can do, but where he found success as like a specific teacher personal trainer. That's kind of his niche. I think that's probably a good way to start out the year. I think that'll be a good episode for anyone. Before I kind of go back into, I got Dr. Poppy Gibson. Her and I had a great conversation about everything, especially about like grade 8s having social media. That was kind of, 8-year-olds having social media. I have a few other episodes kind of already prepared, ready to go for January with Curtis Houston as well. And Nathan Burns, something on metacognition. So a lot of good stuff coming. And thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate your support in 2024, and here's to another good year.